Greetings, Spitz Planetarium users. This is Dan Zielinski, and this is episode 4 of the Spitz Starry Night and ATM tutorials. Today we're going to look at all the commands that are on the control line of ATM. Let's get started. The commands I refer to are the commands that appear when you double-click on the top line of ATM. We start with tag. Now, in the Starry Night lines, tag does nothing but a visual marker for you. On the control line, tags are a little bit more important. I'm going to make this first tag point X and make a second tag about 7 seconds later named point Y. Now, what you're going to notice is that a tag on a control line will actually display whatever you have written in the tag command as the program runs. So there you go. There's point X. And as the show runs, it'll show point Y. This gives you a nice way to display little notes during a show. The clock command will most likely not be used. This will be used in older systems when you want to sync the timing of the computer with an outside time source, like a tape or other media devices that are usually in older planetariums. Pause. Probably the most used command on the control line. Pause does exactly as it says. It will pause the program in the middle of its run. I'm going to write a pause program here, wait for it, and set it just a little bit after point Y. Now these are great for live performances or a lecture of some sort where you bring an image up, but then you need to wait and talk about it, maybe get questions from your students or audience or whatever, and then when you're ready, you hit the button to move on. So here's the pause, wait for it, and what it's waiting for is you to either hit the pause button, your space bar, or whatever other button you have set to advance. Loop. It's exactly as it sounds. This is used when you want to loop a certain section in your program more than once. So I'm going to insert a loop command right here. Now the important thing is that you need to match it with one of your previous tags on your control line. So I'm going to use point Y. So I simply type in point Y. It will now loop back to point Y when the program reaches that point. We need this though, counter, a loop counter. We need to tell it how many times it's going to loop. So I'm going to enter in 2. Now the key though is you need to make sure the loop counter goes outside the loop, like so. With it out there, I'm going to simply run this program, and as the program goes by, it now knows, oh, I'm going to loop in my next loop twice. It'll approach the loop back to point Y, that was loop number 1. There's loop number 2, and it's completed its count, so it will now continue. Now, if you move the loop counter into the loop, this is how you can do something infinitely. So it'll reach point Y, say loop twice, go back to point Y, say loop twice again. So in this case, you will always loop 2 more times, or in this case, every single time. And you will be stuck in this loop for an indefinite period of time. SubShow. This is a great command for linking multiple smaller programs together. Simply hit sub, and then the SubShow button, and this will open the folder that has all your show queue files. I have preset a YouTube episode 4 SubShow folder, and I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to then run the program from prior to that point. I'm going to hit the pause, obviously hit my pause button to go on, and once it hits there, it goes to a SubShow, a second show I had written. Now this is simply a bunch of tags in the Starry Night line, and again, they do nothing except for visually give you the word sub. But the point here with the SubShow is that at the end of the show coming up, it will return to the same point in the previous show. Branch vote. This command is only available to planetariums that have this technology. It requires a voting station on the arm for your audience. Simply place what queue to go to depending on what the audience voted for. If most of them click the top button, they're going to go see my summer show. If they click on the bottom button, they're going to go see my winter show. Left button, they'll see the fall. Right button, they'll see the spring. And center button, they'll see the northern sky. 5 shows about constellations that I've created. But this allows the audience then to choose which path they want to go to. There's even an option for if there's a tie, you can enter something into the tie line down there. Link. This is just like a sub-show except for one distinct difference. It does not return to the previous show. So just like our sub-show, I'm going to actually click link, put in that sub-show that I've pre-made, delete the old one, we don't need that one, and we're going to start the program before the pause. I'm going to hit the space bar to let it go. When it hits the link, it will go to the sub-show I pre-made. Now, the only difference here is it will not return at the end. This is best used if you want to create a show in chapters. So you create all of chapter 1, then you link it to chapter 2, then you link it to chapter 3, and so on. Shut down. This is a great command for doing exactly that, shutting down ATM. I'm going to put in a shutdown command. Simply click on it and hit OK. It creates the shutdown icon. I'm going to put this near the end because, of course, you'd shut down near the end of a show. And we're going to run it from just a short ways ahead just to show you what it does. As soon as it reaches shutdown point, a big menu comes up and says, do you want to shut down your entire system? Now, don't worry, entire system does not mean your computers and everything. It simply means ATM. So I click yes. This has not been saved since I did it, so I'm going to save it. And you'll see now ATM leaves and it displays Starry Night in the background. Indirect activation. I don't see this command being used by many, but what it does is it allows you to choose the option of what happens if a show gets clicked on while the show is running. So I'm going to show you what the last option does, which is load and play a show. Now I'm going to send the show into action. It now reads that command. Now it knows to play and load and play the next command I play. Now it's going to go into that loop that we said earlier. Now I'm going to double click on another show, the sub-show I created. Because I've now chosen it to load and play, it will load and play the one I double clicked on. So you could use this option if you did want to switch shows in the middle. Now instead, I'm going to switch just to ignore it. Now this is a safety precaution in case you accidentally double click on a show. So now when it goes into its deadly loop here, I'm going to double click on the second show, but this time it simply ignores it, staying focused on the program running. Batch file. This command will only be used if you are familiar with batch files. It simply executes a batch file that you have saved onto your computer during the program. Here is a sample of a sub-show program I wrote for our planetarium. This is a pre-show, something that runs while people walk in and waiting for the show to start. It asks a bunch of brain teasers and such. So what I'm going to do is hit play and just allow you to, and I'll walk through what's going on. It's telling me to insert a certain CD. This would happen prior to anybody even coming in. And then it's ready to go. So I hit start. It counts that it needs to loop once, but it's inside the loop, so it'll infinitely loop. So it goes to the first sub-show and starts displaying the question. And it'll wait a while, and we're going to fast forward through this. And it goes, answers the question. Once it gets to the end of the question, it simply returns back to the previous program, loads the next sub-show, which is the next question, and it continues. And this will repeat for however long until your show starts. Now, the reason I love this method for a pre-show is because how easily it can change. Say I come up with another question, or maybe I want this question to happen later. I simply now only have to go up to the top and rearrange the sub-show icons, or change which one it's showing. It makes it very easy to change. The tags underneath are simply telling me where it's advertising future shows, and when it's advertising to turn off your cell phones for the show. And of course the last one is the loop, back to start, which again will start the loop. Now a sample program of shutting down your planetarium. 3 simple commands to start. Front projector, power down. rear projector, power down, and power down, of course, your auxiliary projector if it's turned on. 2 seconds in, you can see a tag in the program that reminds us to close Starry Night and to quit RenderBox. This program is great when you have other people running your planetarium. Like I very often have a high schooler running it, and I don't want them to prematurely turn off the video projectors before they've cooled down. So you'll notice 2 minutes later in the program, I finally place a shutdown command. So the students know they have to wait for the shutdown command before they can turn off the projectors. The big button appears, they can hit yes, and since they've already turned off the previous 2, they're free to shut down all and power down. And that was episode 4. Hopefully you got a lot of great ideas and more understanding on how ATM control line works. I'm Dan Zielinski. Post any questions, comments, or any ideas for future videos below. See you next time.